big flag on. I hope I say something interesting. Hari Hari Bol. Could you help with this? Just settings. Hare Krishna. In time-honored ISKCON fashion, I'm supposed to then say, "Oh, come on, you can do better than that." Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Never fails. So Hare Krishna, everyone. Today is a special day. Hello. Got it? This looks very serious now. All we need is a roadie to rush in with some gaffer tape. Hare Krishna. My name is Kripamoya, and this is very unusual for me to be speaking at Bhaktivedanta Manor in the evening. I'm usually kind of a morning type of guy. But today is a very special day, and special days require special circumstances. Today we are one day before the appearance day of Lord Narasimha, which is tomorrow. Shri Narasimhadeva Ki Jai. And today has been set aside as a glorification of a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, not by popularity, not by democratic vote, but by Prabhupada's choice. Prabhupada chose this devotee, and as far as I understand, he's the only disciple of Srila Prabhupada who was placed on the Vaishnava calendar to be honored perpetually. That is why in 2025 we're celebrating this day of the appearance of Jayananda Prabhu. As he is listed in the Vaishnava calendar that we Gaudiya Vaishnavas follow all over the world now, in all our different branches and homes, Sri Jayananda Thakur. Now, Thakur means a highly worshipable person. Why did Prabhupada select just one of his disciples? Gosh, it's sounding like a conspiracy theory, isn't it? Why did Srila Prabhupada select just one of his disciples to be a worshipable person and to be added to the Vaishnava calendar? Were there no others? Prabhupada had very trusted men and women who followed him, 4,800 disciples, out of whom he selected a few for governance work, some sannyasis for leadership. But this devotee was selected out of all of them. Maybe maybe the receptionist can tell him to. That's it. Okay. That's okay. Just, if you can tell the receptionist to just cool everyone. Tell them it's Saturday, not Sunday. Come on Sunday if you want to be noisy. I was watching as the Vatican declared the new Pope. Gasped in horror. Well, in surprise, I won't say horror. Gasped in surprise. The new Pope is an American. Oh my God. 133 cardinals. They got it wrong. How can the Pope be an American? Pope has to be a saint. Well, I had the same surprise when I went to Simantadweep just a few weeks ago It's an island out of the 9 islands of Navadvip, so named because there's 9 islands. And I saw Jayananda Prabhu's jacket enshrined in amongst beautiful tree mentioned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur as dedicated to Lord Shiva. Beautiful artifacts relating to Parvati as she honors Mahaprabhu on that particular island, surrounded by Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra as they manifest for more modern pastimes. And I thought, this looks incongruous, or at least my mind said this looks incongruous. It's an American jacket in a glass frame. And then I read underneath, this is dedicated to the memory of Jayananda Thakur. And then I had to do not a mental check, but a spiritual check. Why can a saint not be born in America? You see. Why can a sadhu not be an American? Why can someone who perfected their spiritual life not be an American? I'm not American. Okay? But why can it? We have all of our, turn it down. We have all of our scriptures telling us there's only 2 things. There's the soul, well actually there's 3 things. There's the soul, the body, and God. There's the soul, which is you. It's eternal. It lives forever. It's never born and it never dies. Then there's the body. Slap your knee. Come on, there it is. That's it. It's made of matter. Bone, blood, all of that. And that doesn't live forever. It comes at a certain point, stays for some time, and then disappears. And the relationship between the soul and the body is like this. The soul is completely spiritual, the body is completely material. If you allow your body to dominate the soul, you are called materialistic. If you allow the soul to dominate the body, you are spiritualistic. And for the time that you are spiritualistic, you will purify the relationship between you and your body, because your body will become spiritualized. I grew up in a small village in Cornwall. It's a place called Boyton. And there's a church, and there's a Methodist chapel, and 1 shop. And in between there's a blacksmith's. You know what is blacksmith? Where you take cold metal, you put it in the fire, you heat it up, and you make horseshoes. And as a child, I used to like to go along to see the horses' shoes being put on. But the metal goes in black, the fire heats it up, and it turns into red hot. Turns red hot. And then in that red hot condition, it burns itself onto the horse's hoof shape. So in the same way, the soul, when it's placed in the spiritual energy, it gets hot. It can act like fire. When the cold metal is put into the fire, you take it out of the fire, it glows like fire and can burn you as fire. A few minutes before, just go with me, a few minutes before, the cold metal would not burn you. Now I put it in the fire, 5 minutes later, it burns like fire. So this is the process of yoga or spiritual life. We become spiritualized, and our spiritual nature comes out. There's a great sage called Gautama Rishi, and Gautama Rishi, he wrote, there are 8 qualities of the soul, 8 intrinsic qualities of the soul. Things like compassion and goodness and knowledge and happiness. These are the intrinsic qualities of the soul. When you spiritualize yourself by a process of spiritualization, which Srila Prabhupada called Krishna consciousness, then the spiritual qualities come out. And it does not matter which country you're living in. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter if you can speak Hindi or Gujarati. You might pop up in Armenia. And you might be disabled, a disabled Armenian, okay, with one eye. But if you follow the process of spiritualizing yourself, those spiritual qualities will come out. So someone like A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, his message was for the whole world. I used to live in Africa, in Kenya. Anybody from Kenya? Your parents from Kenya? No. India? Okay. That's the difference today. Many years ago I would ask anybody from, and everybody's hands would go up. So in Africa, once Srila Prabhupada came, and the devotees had arranged for the local middle-class Indian ladies and gentlemen to come to the program, and they were all patiently there waiting for Prabhupada to speak. This was in Nairobi, capital city of Kenya. And he looked over the crowd and he said, "They're all Indians?" He said, "Yes, Prabhupada. They really want to come and hear your talk." He said, "Very good, but where are the Africans?" He said, "I came here for the Africans. This is Africa, no? If I wanted to speak to Indians, I could have stayed in India. My mission here is for the Africans. Go find some Africans." And they went out into the street. And they said, "Come, come, come." And then Prabhupada was very happy. Started kirtan. So in the same way, Prabhupada went to Russia. For who? The Russians. And in America, and South America, and Australia, Prabhupada went for the Australians, and the South Americans, and the Americans. Now when Prabhupada went to America, his first prayer to Sri Krishna was, "My dear Lord, I don't know why you've brought me here. The whole country is covered with Rajaguna and Tamaguna. I don't know why you've brought me here. But if you think that I can do something here, then I'm just a puppet. Make me dance, make me dance, make me dance as you wish." This was Prabhupada's request to Krishna. And Krishna sent him lots of young men and women, and they came to him. And the story of one of these young men who came to Srila Prabhupada was so interesting and relevant for us, because it shows all the qualities that are mentioned in the sacred journals, sacred texts, about what it means to be a saint. So in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna is speaking to Uddhava. You know the name of Uddhava? Uddhavji. And Uddhava is worried about Krishna's imminent departure from the world. So he asks him a series of questions. And then he says, "How can I find someone who will help me to remember you?" And then Krishna says, "You look for this person." And he lists 28 qualities that you will find in such a person as can be fully taken shelter of. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has an opportunity, we get a list of 26. These are 28 qualities. And the main quality, Krishna says, is that he is surrendered to me. And in the Adi Purana, Krishna says that person who is surrendered to me, he surrenders to my devotee. One who says that he knows me does not know me. But one who says that he knows my devotee and surrenders to my devotee, he knows. So this person was such a surrendered devotee, such a surrendered disciple of Srila Prabhupada. One time here in London, one devotee was describing what he did before he came to Krishna consciousness. How in a factory in Cardiff, he was making bathtubs out of steel. And a big steel hammer would come down on a plate of steel and stamp out a bathtub. And he was describing it to Prabhupada, and it was so noisy, Prabhupada, you couldn't hear anything, all day long for 8 hours a day. Another devotee said, "From these conditions, Srila Prabhupada, how did we come to you? How could we come to you?" And Prabhupada said, "No." He said, "As soon as I called you, you came." Because he said, Prabhupada had said that in your last life, he said you were disciples of my Guru Maharaj, and he sent you here to be with me. That's the story. So the devotee said, we were living and working in hellish conditions. How is that possible? Prabhupada said, no, I came, I called you, and you came. As soon as I called you, you came. So Jayananda is one of those disciples who came as soon as Prabhupada called him. And he was one of the first to come on the west coast of America. And he sacrificed his money, his time, his words, his daily hours when he was not working, everything he gave to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was, at that time, wanting to put his Bhagavad Gita, as it is, into print. And in San Francisco and Berkeley, Jayananda was the only one that was working. The devotees came to the ashram and lived there, shaved their heads, did service in the ashram, which was something that Prabhupada wanted. He wanted small communities, but he also wanted them to survive. And you need some money to survive. So Jayananda was older by about 10 years, and the others 10, 15 years. And he was working. At one time he was working as a taxi driver. He would drive his taxi all day. And then at night he would come to the temple. In the morning he'd be there for the morning program. Then taxi, then evening program. So in those days, $5,000 was an awful lot of money. This was in the 1960s, 1967. But when Prabhupada asked his disciples to give some contribution so that he could print Bhagavad Gita, they did so. And the result of that is this book. And the only reason, this is the very first copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is, printed in 1968. And the only reason that I can sit here today in 2025 with this copy of the very first Bhagavad Gita is because Jayananda himself gave $5,000 for it to be printed. So I'll pass it around reverently. So I'd like to read a few stories about Jayananda and why he was such a person whose example in life we can not only note, but we can try to follow in our lives. Certain qualities have been highlighted, certain stories, and then we will have some stories from you, if you've read some stories. So I didn't know him personally. He was quite early on. I came to Hare Krishna in 1974, and Jayananda passed away in 1977 after joining in 1967. Srila Prabhupada went to New York in 1965, started the Hare Krishna movement, or ISKCON, in 1966. By 1967, was in Montreal and Los Angeles and San Francisco. So Jayananda was an all-American boy, handsome, strong, intelligent. He was quite tall. When Prabhupada saw him, he said, "Oh," he said, "you are tall, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." And he had a degree in mechanical engineering. But when they asked him, "Why are you a taxi driver?" he said, "I didn't fit in with the upper class crowd." Yeah. He was introspective by nature, and he had a lot of questions that needed to be answered. And many devotees have a similar story, that we come to spiritual life after a period of introspection, frustration, because we don't get the answers that we're looking for, sometimes depression, and sometimes even suicidal thoughts. I've got to find the answer to the question of existence. So he was right there in that space when he heard, or he saw a small article in a San Francisco paper about an Indian Swami who had come to the Bay Area, that's San Francisco Bay, to propagate the chanting of the names of God. He felt a ray of hope. and he made up his mind to attend the Swami's lectures. So these early lectures in the morning were attended by a few hippies. And Jayananda, you'll see in the old photographs, was not a hippie. Do you know what a hippie is? Hippie. Long hair, headband, flower, very colourful tie-dye shirt, like that. But Jayananda came with a suit, white collar, tie, proper clothing. And he stood out by the fact that he was straight, you could say. So he came and he said, this is a quote, he said, "I wasn't much of a religionist, but I was attracted to Srila Prabhupada." And sometimes he would come early in the morning when Prabhupada gave the Srimad Bhagavatam classes, and he was the only one, apart from the devotees with their shaved heads and orange robes, and the ladies with their saris. He was the only one dressed in ordinary clothing who was listening to Prabhupada. But Prabhupada became fond of him, and sometimes he would invite him to take prasadam in his room. You see, what you have to understand is Srila Prabhupada was very kind. He wasn't just a great philosopher. He didn't just write books. He didn't just look down his nose and tell people what to do this, do that, or get angry. But Prabhupada was very kind. One time we met a young man in Sheffield, and he said, "Your Swami, I met your Swami." And we thought he meant somebody else. And then he told this story, that Prabhupada used to take a morning walk in a place called Russell Square Park. And sometimes there would be young men who would be asleep on the park bench. And Prabhupada would wake them up. And he told the devotee to go and wake this boy up and bring him back to the temple. Brought him back to the temple. He said, make sure he takes a shower and he has prasadam. So he had a shower, took prasadam. Then he went to Prabhupada's room. And Prabhupada spoke to him for 1 hour. He spoke to him for 1 hour. Now, I didn't get Prabhupada's undivided attention for 1 hour. So that story left me feeling very jealous. Now, what did he do with that 1 hour? Well, he said, I never forgot it for the rest of my life. He never joined the ashram, but he always remembered the time when Prabhupada was so kind to him. So these things we have to remember, that on the one hand, Prabhupada was the acharya, but on the other hand, very kind, very normal, you could say. You're hungry? You give him breakfast. So here with Jayananda, Srila Prabhupada didn't say anything, but he would serve him prasadam. Now, as a disciple, you serve your guru, and it's unusual that the guru should serve you. Sit down. The guru just spoons the sabji, whatever it is, the fruit, onto your plate. You want to do something, but here's Prabhupada feeding him. Anyway, so Jayananda was working as a taxi driver and helping Prabhupada. Where did that book go? Just make sure it comes back, okay? Very valuable book. There's only a few printed. Make sure it gets all the way to Jai Krishna because he wants to see it. Okay. So here's one devotee recollecting something about Jayananda. This is a devotee called Chandanacharya. He was completely enamored by Krishna consciousness. And devotees at that time used to go out to sell incense. And they'd make the incense and go and sell it. This was also Prabhupada's idea. Prabhupada's idea was, he said, I saw that the Ramakrishna people were doing it, or some other organization was doing it. He said, I thought we could also do it. So spiritual sky incense, selling incense, was Prabhupada's idea. So the devotees went out to sell incense. So Jayananda would go out all by himself, and he would rise every morning before 4 o'clock, have a little Mangalarti, chant all his rounds, read, cook prasadam, and then go out. The devotee said he never deviated. He loved it. He was completely happy as long as he was practicing Krishna consciousness. Take prasadam, for example. Jayananda worshipped prasadam. When a little prasadam spilled on the floor, he would always bend down on all fours and lick it up. You heard that? The Prophet said, if you spill milk, all your spiritual advancement for the week is lost. Yes. That is why in the old days we used to spill a bit of milk, immediately devotees would jump down on all fours like a cat. Prasadam, it's Prasadam Prabhu. He would always bend down and look it up. He loved to cook, offer, distribute, and eat prasadam in a big way. He would always take prasadam with him and distribute it, whether he was making a boga run, meaning getting vegetables from the market, or taking a chanting party downtown. He would even say the word prasadam in a different way. One devotee remembers that he came to him late at night, and he said, Prabhu, try this prasadam. And it was peanut butter halava. Of course, the devotee couldn't resist. So when a new devotee would come to the temple, someone who was interested, Jayananda would feed them very sumptuously with prasadam. One devotee called Jambavan remembers that when he first came to the temple, Jayananda gave him a big plate of prasadam. He'd finished it, he just managed to finish it. And then Jayananda came with an identical plate, and he finished that too. The prasadam distribution is such a quality that if you really think that you've got something special with prasadam, you will distribute it, you will share it with others. Isn't it? Everybody likes Diwali time. The Diwali, someone comes to your house and gives you sweets, special sweets. And in Bengal, of course, we have such wonderful sweets as chum chum and all kinds of different Bengali sweets. And so, but every home-cooked item, once it's been offered to Krishna, is the same as these delicacies. So Jayananda would take them with him, and people remember him. When he died, so many people came to the funeral, people that you wouldn't think are spiritual people. To look at them, they wouldn't seem to be spiritual people. You know, you normally have this spiritual aura around someone that they seem as if they're on a quest, on a spiritual quest. Well, with the people that Jayananda attracted, he attracted them because of his saintly qualities, and he used to distribute prasadam to them. Prasadam, Prabhupada said, is a secret weapon. So never let it be underestimated how powerful it is. He used to go downtown in the streets, chanting very enthusiastically, and he would take the devotees to people's houses, and especially if they were interested in becoming a devotee, he would have big kirtans in their home. See, this is another technique that we need to maintain. Even if there are only two of them, they would jump and chant and say, Nitai Gaur. Yeah. Kripamoya Dāsa remembers how one day after working very hard for 10 hours straight, Jayananda suddenly announced, hey everyone, it's 10 to 7. Let's go to Arti. Thank you. Can you just pass it up to me because I can't reach them down there. Thank you. So even after working 10 hours, he had such an enthusiasm for the holy name. So here's a few qualities. What qualities have we had so far? We've had, that's a fancy table for a cup of water, isn't it? We've had, what have we had? We've had enthusiasm for serving Krishna, enthusiasm for the messages of the pure devotee, absolute belief in the power of prasadam, top-level enthusiasm for kirtan, even with only a couple of devotees. Sometimes it's difficult to get devotees to come on Harinam, isn't it, Deepak? People don't want to come on Harinam. They will come on Harinam when there's about, 50 others, Because in their mind they're thinking, I don't want to look foolish. I don't want people looking at me. So that's why many people will come at time of Rath Yatra. Because Rath Yatra is this big technicolor chariot that draws all the visual attention and no one's looking at me. But when there's no chariot, then people might look at me. Dancing in the street, not too sure about that. But you see, this movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much an impassioned movement where we exuberantly sing and dance in the streets. People love it. They don't know what we're doing. They don't know what we're eating. They don't know what we've been drinking. They don't know why we're singing. They don't know where the enthusiasm comes from. But they like it. They just like it. One time in London, there was an advertising company just over the road from the Soho Street Temple in London. The devotees went over and they said, "You're an advertising company. We need to get the message of Krishna consciousness out to everyone. Can you help us?" They said, "You don't need any advertising." They said, "What do you mean?" He said, 8 men with shaved heads, bright orange clothes, walking up and down the street singing. You don't need any marketing strategy. You're getting enough attention." Then Christmas time came. They came over to the temple and they said, "Could you help us? We would like to feature you on our Christmas card. It goes out to all our customers, all our clients." Devotees said yes. A few weeks later they got a Christmas card, and on the front of the Christmas card there was devotees on Harinam on Oxford Street on a Christmas card. Inside the Christmas card it said, "Dear customer, Happy Christmas, Happy Christmas, 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 Happy, Happy." See, people don't know why they like it, but they love it. They love it. It's something deep down. It is like a sitar. You know the sitar? Ravi Shankar plays a sitar, or used to. I hope he's still playing somewhere. There's top strings and what they call sympathetic strings. And the sympathetic strings underneath the top strings vibrate. They're the strings that give the sitar its unique sound. Dun, 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 dun. So you play the top strings. Now you don't touch the sympathetic strings, but they vibrate in sympathy. And it's like that. When people hear the holy name of Krishna, the heart vibrates in sympathy. Not quite sure why, but these strings are deep. It's very catching. So this is a devotee who comes from perhaps practicing Krishna consciousness for many lifetimes. He comes. Karandar. Remembers how Jayananda preached to him on his first day in the temple. As they worked together preparing a little garden for Srila Prabhupada at the old Los Angeles temple, Jayananda said, "You know, things don't always go just right in Krishna consciousness. You have to keep chanting." In 1967, Prabhupada had written to Jayananda. He'd written to him to say that so far as adding anything to what I've told you, there's not a lot to be added. Just the constant chanting of the names of Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra. In other words, some devotees were pressing Prabhupada, can you reveal this part or that part of the tradition, the ritual, ceremony? Prabhupada said, as far as that, just keep chanting. Jayananda's preaching was very attractive for the non-devotees. One devotee remembers, it was 11:30 at night, and Jayananda was up fixing a broken down Sankirtan van. As he lay on his back, working under the van, he preached to two hippies who were standing nearby. All they could see of him was a pair of legs, but they stood by listening, completely absorbed, as Jayananda worked and preached away. It's very interesting. His preaching, his teaching was infectious. People who joined because of him are very great in number. There was Prabhupada and his preaching, then the devotees who immediately surrounded Prabhupada, they would, with their infectious enthusiasm, they would bring people to Prabhupada. And Jayananda was one of those ones who brought many stalwart devotees to the movement. Next quality, humility. Humility. He treated everyone as his superior, even new devotees. He was asking their opinions. To one boy he said, this is a devotee who later became a disciple called Maharaj Das. He said, hey, back to Mike, what do you think of this? So although his service was glorious service, what he was doing, working all hours available, completely absorbed in the process, he never put himself at any great height. He never assumed any position or post. He was never a temple president or a sannyasi or this or that, but he was always fixing the van or doing the dishes or doing practical work. Even when he came to get his when he came to get his second initiation, Prabhupada would normally give them Prabhupada would normally give the mantras, and it would take 2-3 minutes to give the mantra to someone. With Jayananda, repetition of the Sanskrit words that make up the Gayatri mantras went on for half an hour. And then Prabhupada just laughed and he said, however you pronounce it, Krishna will accept your devotion. There was a devotee who came and started to praise him, and one old devotee from this temple, Danavir, was there, and as a young devotee. And he said, you know, if you've been around this movement a few years, people naturally offer you some respect. Another devotee says, it was difficult not to think of yourself as being better than him. If you had any reason to be puffed up, Jayananda would bring it out in you. So Prabhupada talks about different types of devotees. Some devotees see all the problems, all the lack of quality in another. Some people see more neutrally. Some people see good qualities. But here he says that when you came in touch with him, you would leave his company thinking that you were a great devotee. In other words, that not that I'm special, but that I'm dear to Krishna, which is a very powerful preaching tool. He would step aside so that others could lead kirtan, give class, or do arti. Instead, he could be found fixing cars, unplugging toilets, washing dishes, or taking out the rubbish. Now this wasn't artificial. Sometimes we do find that for a week or two, someone who moves into the ashram or who comes as a volunteer will do the dirtiest jobs. But it doesn't last very long. It doesn't last long because it's difficult to have enthusiasm for that level of humility. There was a story about someone speaking to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's guru. He said, I really like the chanting, I really like the prasadam, I really like everything. He said, but I could not join your Gaudiya mission. He said, oh, why not? He said, because your Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that you should be able to respect all others, tolerate anything that they do that disrespects you, and at the same time, offer them all respects. He said, that's too much. I can do one of those. I can offer respects to others. But if they disrespect me, I can't take it. You, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wants me to accept disrespect from someone and offer only respect, only love and affection in return. I can't do it. It's too difficult for me. It's a very difficult thing to maintain. Once a new boy came to visit the San Francisco temple. He wanted to help, so Keshava Das sent him to the trash area where Jayananda was preparing the weekly trash run. Jayananda told the boy, I'm the garbage man round here. For years I've been watching garbage men carry out the trash, and now Krishna is giving me a chance to do this for him. But he said it was such enthusiasm that the boy not only helped load the trash, but accompanied Jayananda to the rubbish dump. Later on, that boy became a devotee, and he recalled thinking, if the rubbish men at this temple can be so blissful, just imagine what the rest of the devotees are like. At one time they were running around raising funds for the Rath Yatra, and there was no place to sleep at night, and they found an empty wardrobe, and Jayananda just slept inside the wardrobe, half sitting up. This is genuine. He was not acting in such a way that devotees would say, oh, aren't you humble? You're very humble. This was just natural. This is another reason why Prabhupada has selected this day to be honored. This is the day he died in 1977. He would be a tireless worker. He'd be the first one up in the morning and the last one to sleep at night. I don't know about you, but if I get up in the morning and I'm working all day, I deserve to go to bed early. Don't you feel like that? I want to be rewarded with a good night's sleep, especially if I get up at 3 in the morning and by 7 o'clock comes around and I think, oh, it's time for me. I deserved it, but not Jayananda. First one up in the morning, last one to sleep at night. It was Jayananda who was always running out to get the flowers, Jayananda who was washing dishes, making sure the kitchen was clean, Jayananda who was often missing class while he was out doing some service, and always encouraging others to go out to preach. One amazing thing is that a corollary quality to humility is your inability to find fault with anybody. You can't find fault with others. There may be faults from an objective point of view, but you can't find fault with others. He could not criticize others. It was against his nature. Even if a devotee did something which warranted criticism, Jayananda would usually say nothing, or else something that made the mistake, or he would say something that made the mistake appear to be perfectly understandable. No matter who was giving class, who was leading kirtan, he would always appreciate it. Now, I tend to be a bit selective. If a person's giving class, I will give you my critical analysis after the class. I'll say, yes, this was good, this was weak, this was strong. If a person's leading kirtan, I will say, at least within my mind, that was good, that was not so good. Could have done this one, could have done that one. Bit slow, bit fast. But not Jayananda. If one devotee was criticizing another within earshot of Jayananda, Jayananda would simply what? He would simply leave. Rather than criticize others, Jayananda would contribute nothing less than positive Krishna conscious energy to any situation. Okay. Sometimes devotees would bring up their expansive aspirations for spreading Krishna consciousness, the big ideas. Jayananda would always encourage them, however extraordinary their ideals. At the same time, he was not a fool. He would always pick the right man to do a particular duty. So he was one of life's encouragers. This is another important quality, to see the good in others, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said. Preaching means to see the spark of Krishna consciousness in someone's heart and fan it into a fire. But you've got to be able to see the spark first and then fan it with your words. You know. I felt encouraged when I first came to the temple. Someone said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I did art at school." And the devotee ran down the corridor. "He's an artist." I thought, "Oh, really?" Another devotee said to me, "Oh, you could be a sannyasi in 5 years' time." I said, "Really?" He saw, they spoke in such encouraging ways. Jayananda was dear to everyone, especially to those shopkeepers that he went to get regular supplies for the kitchen or for the... Usually devotees go for two things regularly: food supplies, groceries, and flowers for the altar. Cloth for the deities, flowers for the altar, ghee for the kitchen, and different fruits and vegetables. And it's said that the mark of a devotee is that they are dear with the Dira Dira Janapriyo, those who are high-class people and those who are ruffians, rough people. Devotees are equally dear to them. He was as much at home with the Italians at the vegetable market as with the brahmacharis in the temple. He would make friends on the street, and they would often come up to him and say, "Hey, where have you been?" Once a devotee was approached by a staggering drunk in San Francisco. The drunk looked at his robes and asked the devotee, "Hey, where's my old friend, Jayananda?" And when devotees took over his incense run later on, they would meet the different people that he'd sold incense to. And some would say, "Where's my old friend, Johnny Ananda?" One man told them, he said, "Well, I don't know much about your philosophy, but if that Jayananda is into it, it must be all right." So somehow or another, people saw his saintly qualities which just shone from him, which are universal qualities which the soul picks up on. It's not that you have to have a Bhakti Shastri degree and then someone says, "Oh yes, now you're a proper devotee." Okay, well, on behalf of the School of Bhakti that invited me to give this talk, you should all get a Bhakti Shastri degree. But the real degree is the spiritual qualities that cannot be hidden. One time someone in New York City, a policeman, came up to Prabhupada. He said, "Excuse me, sir, do you know you're glowing?" I mean, he came up, he had to tell Prabhupada. He said his face was glowing. Yeah. Another time they came up to Prabhupada and he said, "How are your disciples so happy?" He said, "They were so bright-faced." Because the qualities of the soul come out. This is the point. So with Jayananda, his qualities were coming out. That even a person didn't know the philosophy, didn't know how to categorize, were you a senior devotee, junior devotee, GBC, BBC, what are you? still those spiritual qualities were so shining out of him that everybody remarked upon it. He's something special. You see? Once near the Rath Yatra cart work site, Jayananda invited Keshava to step inside a bar, so where they were serving alcohol. Why did he invite him in to see it into a bar? Devotees don't go into bars, don't go into pubs, but inside were his friends, Jayananda's friends. They walked inside, and immediately some 25 faces looked up and smiled brightly. Someone said, "Oh, this must be your friend you were telling us about, the temple president." So all these 25 people drinking in the bar had been working on the Rath Yatra cart. Isn't that amazing? Jayananda, because he was an engineering degree in Ohio University, working as a taxi driver, fixing cars and vans, the next thing was to become involved in Rath Yatra, building the Rath Yatra carts, which are big 50-foot cars. Final Prasadam story. Jambavan recalls being woke up one night at midnight by Jayananda. "Wake up," said Jayananda. "I've got a benediction for you." He then pushed a big samosa into the sleepy Jambavan's mouth. So he engaged everyone. And the thing is that you can get a lot done if you don't want to take the credit. If you want to take the credit, then you're going to have to do it all by yourself. But if you don't mind who gets the praise, who gets the credit for something, and you're willing to take your task, split it up into 100 pieces, and give every one of the 100 people a little bit of the task to do, as the Chinese say, many hands make light work. You can get a lot done. A, if you split it up into different small jobs, and B, if you don't mind who gets the credit for it. So you'll do it, you'll mastermind it, you'll organize it, you'll split it up into different tasks, and someone will then come along and say, "Haven't these people done wonderfully?" Someone who doesn't want to take the credit, who's humble, just says, "Yes, they have. Fantastic." But the main thing is that my spiritual master has got the job done through me as an instrument. That's the main thing. That's a disciple. That's a disciple. And those people feel important that they have the job. Here's a description of building the Rath Yatra cart. And one time, this is the cart in 1976 in New York, I believe, the famous Rath Yatra cart. One was for Los Angeles, the first time they had big 3-cart procession, 3 big chariots, first time in Los Angeles, and the first time 3 big chariots in New York City. Now, New York City, when we have Rath Yatra, it goes down 5th Avenue. It is now impossible in the city of New York to do any procession down 5th Avenue apart from St. Patrick's Day and a couple of really other big ones, and the Hare Krishnas. Because we got in so early. And the fact that we had 3 carts there is up to Jayananda. And of course, Mr. Donald Trump, who gave the patch of land that they were able to work on. But he was building the cart and working 14 hours a day. He would get a crew of cynical devotees, sort of around the fringes of every temple, the cynical devotees, bloop devotees, uncooperative people, and non-devotees off the street to build the Rath carts. And although many of the people building the Rath cart took a break to have a smoke, he would get them to work 10, 12, or 14 hours a day. He was always glorifying them and working hard himself. In fact, he worked harder than anybody else. He didn't want to spend much money. sometimes he would go to the grocery marketplace. There was a famous man called Banana Louie, and he came back with 2 truckloads of bananas and another truckload of first-class pineapples. So he was able to get everybody's friendship. I want to say about the Rath Yatra, which was his crowning glory. He had leukemia in 1976, but he worked on the New York Rath carts, the 3 Rath carts in 1976. And he passed away in 1977. But he would do everything for the festival. He would beg food, flowers, and funding, buy materials, build the carts, advertise, arrange for permits, and organizing the cooking and serving of prasadam. So much was he absorbed in this service that eventually the temple presidents in America called him Mr. Rath Yatra. And due to his efforts in San Francisco, you can still go to the city officials in San Francisco today, and devotees have good relationships with them. So his relationship with Srila Prabhupada was wonderful. And it seemed when they were with each other that Prabhupada was with an old friend. He would invite Jayananda to come. Jayananda would resist, said, "I can't go and see Prabhupada. I'm too dirty. I'm too fallen." Prabhupada was. Anyway. Srila Prabhupada wrote to him. He said, I was very happy to get your recent letter. I'm always thinking of you and praying to Krishna for your advancement. Yes, I remember the old days in San Francisco.